Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, and a very good afternoon, everybody. I know I'm all that's standing between you and freedom, or either you and work, so accordingly I can go slow or long. But thank you all for being here, and it is such a joy to return here to something that every single year I looked forward to is really the best policy gathering. As many of you know, for many years I chaired our housing committee as a council member. It was always coming to the LABC summit, or summits, I should say, with sustainability that gave me the connections, the ideas, and that was usually the launching pad for so many good things that we've done over the last decade and a half. And I want to thank LABC for being the leading business voice in this city, for progress in Los Angeles, for actually figuring out how we can create green jobs, how we can try to make things more affordable for our residents, how we can look at the nexus of transportation and sustainability and housing. And you've just done extraordinary work, so thank you to Mary Leslie and her entire team. Let's give them a round of applause again and thank them. So today, I think we come together as we have in past years, and it's such an honor to come to you. It's the Mayoral Summit, so I always, when I was a council member, aspired maybe one day to come here as a mayor, and I take that responsibility very seriously, because I know it's mayors, it's not just any one of us. But to come here to not just look at what ideas can come from City Hall, but what a mayor can do in hearing ideas from outside City Hall. And I know that I'm in a room of folks that are actors and activists that take the agency that they are given, the ability to actually dream of what we want to see in this city and make it real, coming together for solutions, for innovations, and for action. The housing challenges we face in Los Angeles are not unique, but they are perhaps the most attenuated of any city in America. Other global cities like New York, London, Tokyo have seen that with economic prosperity and with popularity, with people wanting to be in your city, that the concomitant challenges that come with that, of namely keeping things affordable for housing, that this pressure is perhaps in some ways not just a very important policy area, but a metaphor for the challenges we face broadly in our city. The good news is that LA has always been and continues to be a magnet for people. Our problems aren't because of a declining population or a lack of investment. It's precisely because people still want to be here, despite the challenges that we face and the things that we have to overcome. Whether it's the attraction from people from around the world who are drawn to Hollywood, whether it's the nation's busiest seaport, whether it's the nation's #1 manufacturing center, whether it's the surging tech sector that we just had with LAEDC's report that we now have more tech jobs here than in New York, than in Santa Clara County, which is the heart of Silicon Valley, or than in Boston/Cambridge, we're the #1 tech center now. These things all continue to drive people to come here to be the creative story makers and storytellers of the world. That's why during the time period in which Chicago's population has declined by 200,000, our population has increased by that same amount. And as mayor, as was mentioned, I'm leading a back to basics agenda, which is focused on getting the basics right, the fundamentals of a good life for everybody here right, making City Hall work. But also there's nothing more fundamental to our families and to our neighborhoods than a home that is affordable, that is safe, and that is quality. But as our city surges, we face a housing shortage unlike anything we've probably seen since the end of World War II, when we had veterans camping out in what became MacArthur Park, looking for places to live. In fact, UCLA researchers here at the Ziman Center have determined that Los Angeles is now the least affordable housing market in the country. The high cost of housing affects everything in the city. Our economic prosperity is held back by that because it creates challenges to attract and to retain new employees for our businesses here. It affects our quality of life, with families making tough choices on healthcare, healthy food, education, recreation, and saving for the future, because so much of their money has to go to paying for the rent. And they have to work so many hours to meet that. They're not home to help their kids with homework. It tears the social fabric of our city. And all of us feel the impact of the traffic challenges it creates, the environmental challenges that it manifests by forcing residents to move farther and farther away from where they work in order to afford housing with longer commutes and more greenhouse gas emissions and sprawl. I believe solving our housing crisis relies on two key points. And as your mayor, this is what I intend to lead on as your mayor over the next, hopefully, 8 years or so. Those two pillars are increasing housing affordability, and secondly, increasing wages. If you look at our first slide that we have here, I sat down with my staff. I said, I want to do a PowerPoint. I know mayors don't usually do PowerPoints, but I guess it's the legacy of being a former professor. I wanted you to visualize how I think and how we are thinking about this challenge. Increasing affordability can be accomplished by protecting and growing our stock of affordable housing, and also, as we know, by increasing our housing supply. So there's the subsidy side, and there's also the free market side. First, we have to look at protecting existing affordable units. That means enforcing tenant protections in the city's rent stabilization ordinance and looking at reducing tenant displacement from new development, which is why I will implement here in Los Angeles AB 2222, which mandates that existing affordable units affected by new developments using state density incentives be replaced one for one. But let's go a step further, and we're looking at studying whether or not the city could expand this policy to consider a one-to-one affordable unit replacement policy to apply to private development projects requesting a density increase from the city as well. But we also must be strategic about our affordable housing, using our affordable housing funds to acquire, rehabilitate, and permanently protect existing stock, including those covenants that are about to expire. Oftentimes, a dollar spent on a brand new affordable housing unit is half as effective as one spent on an existing unit that we're about to lose in terms of its affordability, that we can preserve for decades to come. But we also want to protect our affordable housing stock by making it more resilient. And I'm so pleased that in the historic partnership, for the first time, the United States Geological Survey lent us Dr. Lucy Jones, who many of you may know as Earthquake Lucy. She comes on our TVs whenever there's the slightest tremor here. And they gave her to us at City Hall for this year. And she's going to be issuing a report in the coming months, by the end of this year, on building retrofits and other seismic policies to ensure that LA's older housing stock, much of which comprises rent-stabilized units, makes it through the next big one. And this is critically important. We could literally lose hundreds of thousands of protected units if they come down in an earthquake. Think about the impact of that as we try to build tens of thousands, what that could do in a single day. But second, we must also increase our subsidized affordable housing construction. And I pledge to be the leader that I have been for 12 years of making sure, as we built together an affordable housing trust fund that topped out over $100 million, but then faced cuts from the federal government and home dollars, the death of CRA, and now under $30 million where that is, we're going to make sure that we get those federal, state, and local housing funds back, while at the same time we come to the table with a stake of our own by building up that trust fund. Right now, please. Thank you, Mary. I can take a drink now. I told Mary clap like every 3 pages so I can sip some water. Right now, I'm very excited to have such a champion leading one of the two houses of our state legislature in Speaker Toni Atkins. And she and I have had extensive conversations about what I can do to help her alongside a group that I convene of the 11 mayors of the 11 largest cities in California, Republican and Democrat, who have signed on to helping her find a dedicated source of affordable housing funds, of which, if done at the level she proposes, would provide about $50 million just for LA City alone each year. And we're going to continue working with other mayors, with governors and stakeholders across the board to take a look at CEQA reform, something that I've always supported. We want to, of course, keep the strong protections of our environment in place, but not the abuses that single individuals can do to tie up projects, oftentimes losing, but still killing the momentum of projects we badly need throughout this state and certainly my city. And I've also made regional cooperation a key component of my time as your mayor. I have convened for the first time all 88 county mayors regularly. We've met, I think, 5 times, so that the mayors of Long Beach and Santa Monica and West Covina and Claremont and Santa Clarita and Los Angeles are all around a table together talking about those issues that ignore borders, like housing affordability, like traffic, like our environmental challenges, like our economic development. And we have to make sure that we do work together and in concert, especially around our MTA and transportation planning. And as MTA chair this year, it's very important to me that we not only deliver our transportation projects, and I'm proud that in my first year as mayor, we've been able to secure $3.4 billion, that's with a B, dollars in federal funding to continue that aggressive agenda. I just came back from meeting with Secretary Fox, who said, you guys have your work done, you have your routes planned out, you've got money to bring to the table. Hey, we've got some balances, can we help you? That's the sort of thing that has awakened Washington's cooperation with LA and makes us now the largest recipient in the country of transportation dollars. But we also, But we also do that while looking at the future of mobility and how it's tied to where people live and work. So this month I'm going to be introducing a motion at the MTA to analyze affordable housing preservation and construction around our transit system, from utilizing MTA-owned land to targeting transit pass programs that will help people get onto public transit near those stations. And we think we will attract some of the cap and trade dollars that we know dollar for dollar are best spent on those sorts of projects, and leaders like Kevin DeLeon and others have helped us make sure was in the implementation legislation for our cap and trade program. But thirdly, shout out to my cousin out there. Thirdly, we must effectively use all of our housing resources to help those most in need, which reach my goal of ending veterans' homelessness by the end of next year. A very ambitious goal, one that I think scares all of us every single day, but one that we know we can achieve, and we have the commitment from Washington to partner with us to do, followed by ending all chronic homelessness shortly thereafter. My office now has a full-time homelessness policy director, exclusively focused on permanent supportive housing. Our city administrative officer has a homelessness point person, and with new leadership at LAHSA, building on the momentum that LAHSA has been able to give us in certain areas, I know that we are going to take a path that will take homeless Angelenos off the street permanently and put them on a path to success. But in addition to our work to protect and increase affordable housing, we must also increase the supply. We can do this in 4 ways. First, by improving our city's building and entitlement process. Second, by using policy to make more housing construction possible. Third, by investing in infrastructure that will stimulate market conditions for the marketplace to say, we want to build. And fourth, by building community support for supporting housing, both affordable and market rate, throughout our communities. Let me go to the first point. First, we have to cut red tape at City Hall. It's the thing that I told my staff. I said, we will get no headlines. With all due respect, maybe at the, when I'm on a news conference, Conan will ask me about it, but it won't be his, leading the news article any evening. But it is the most critical thing that we can do. I brought Bob Stone, a Westwood resident, who some of you may know who he is, but he's the person who termed reinventing government. He was hired by the Clinton administration in 1992 alongside Al Gore. Remember, back in the era of the $500+ toilet seat, he came in and really reinvented federal government. Well, in 2013, when he started for me, working for all of you for a whole $1 a year, and he's been doing such a great job, I'm going to double that this year, he said LA in 2013 is worse off than the federal government was in 1992 in terms of the levels of bureaucracy that exist there. It's not the fault of any of our great workers that are there. We've just inherited systems that are decades old. Our technology, our culture, our discipline system at LAPD was written by a Lieutenant Parker back in the 1930s, and we haven't updated it since. This is endemic to all of our departments, and something which I'm so proud that our general managers, who now have metrics and who are essentially comstatting themselves to drive towards goals, that we've been able to transform that culture to go after that sort of innovation. But we have to, in the housing area, cut this red tape to improve customer service, to fix the city's building review process, and to facilitate the building quality housing. I mean, simply put, you shouldn't have to hire a lobbyist to get something done at City Hall. So I've launched a series of sweeping changes. First, the integration of project review and approval functions across development service departments to reduce time, uncertainty, and cost. What does that mean in plain English? You used to go through, and any of the developers here know, a 3-step process. Starting at the planning department, get your entitlements done. Building, get your first set of permits before you go back to building and safety for your building permits. Now we are doing that in parallel. So a project like the Metropolis project, which is just north of the Staples Center, downtown, $1 billion+ mixed-use project, which would have usually taken 1.5 to 2 years to go through that process, is already in the ground, excavating, 6 months in. And they could have done it earlier, quite frankly. They could have probably done it about 2 months in. Because we shouldn't have to wait for every sink finish to be done and submitted to the city before people can get in the ground. Taking unemployed people off of the unemployment payroll, rolls rather, making sure that we get that time equals money cost down in LA, which spreads through the private sector. This is a good place to do things. And in April, the city council endorsed this plan, and 6 months later, we're starting to see the results. In my first year as mayor, we've increased housing permits by 40% year to year, over 11,000 units. Overall construction valuation in the city increased also 40% to $5.3 billion for last fiscal year, and in this fiscal year we expect it to be about $7 billion, which will be a new record for the city of Los Angeles. To improve customer service, we now have full service development centers in Van Nuys and downtown, and shortly on the west side, so you don't have to come downtown, be part of that same traffic, and add to your costs. And today, the Department of Building and Safety is launching an inspection case management program that will provide a single point of contact to coordinate building inspections for major projects and any housing project with 30 units or more. So case managers will stay with the project when the first building permits are pulled until the last day of construction. Can't tell you for how many years people have said, please, will you do this? Now as mayor, we're doing it. This common sense approach is expected to shorten construction times by 3 to 6 months for 600 projects a year. You see, City Hall can do something to change what the conditions are in the marketplace. And in keeping with my focus on using technology to get things done smarter and faster, we're integrating technology into our development review process, expanding online permitting, and placing every single building record online by the end of this year. So you can stay on the job site when you pull those records. And again, you don't have to go downtown. You can do it at 2 a.m. if you want. Second, remember I said there were 4 components to this. I'm supporting policies to create a pipeline of sites for development, proactive zoning, and regulation to ensure development occurs where it best contributes to the city. This is the policy bucket. Last year, our city adopted a new housing element, which includes a regional housing allocation of 82,000 units through 2021. It's an aspirational document. But as you can see here, it also acknowledges that we will likely only construct 60,000 of those units if everything stays the way that it's been. Well, this mirrors our past performance. To give you an idea, shown here, from 1980 to 2012, we needed to build 336 new housing units to keep up with population growth. We only built 231,000. Now, I want to pause here because this is really the heart of the matter. When people look at the housing crisis, as somebody who's a strong supporter of subsidized housing, who wants to preserve existing affordability, who's focused on homelessness to give the political push that it's needed for a long time, this is the heart of our housing crisis right here. And I think we thought in the 80s and 90s that if we didn't build things, people wouldn't come. Remember, we grew by 200,000 people because people will come for other reasons. They can still have kids and they can move freely in and out of our city. We're not some sort of a walled city state. In that time, what that meant is that people crammed into the old infrastructure. That's why we can't find parking places. That's why we have so much traffic. That's why people are living in substandard housing. And it's a beautiful thing to watch over the last decade, not the death of NIMBYism, but the evolution for all of us of realizing that we can't not build our way out of this, and that building new things doesn't attract new people. It just says the folks that are here might live, again, in safe, more affordable, and more beautiful housing. Now, that comes with a caveat. A lot of people hear that and they say, okay, mayor says, make sure we get as many housing units as we can. We all have to be very strict in making sure we don't have crappily designed, poorly planned, and poorly sited housing. Just because somebody says something is mixed use or whatever the buzzword of the day is, doesn't mean they're going to get through the city process. And I think we should keep a careful eye on keeping neighborhoods the way they are. But along transit corridors, along where the growth is already happening anyways, it is wrong for us not to build housing because we all wind up paying for it. And right now in a city where so many citizens pay more than 50% of their income just to make the rent, it is wrong, and it will continue to drag our city down unless we change it. Historically, we've built out and not up, but mixed-use and transit-oriented development were in many ways foreign concepts just a decade ago. Urbanization was not in the top of people's minds. But this kind of development only worked for so long. Today, we are ready to do better, and I know that we can. So today, I'm announcing my target of 100,000 new housing units in this city by 2021. We are stretched to the limit. Our residents are paying more and more in rent. They're pumping less and less into our economy, or they're living miles and miles away from work. Millions of hours, billions of dollars lost because we haven't gotten this right. Choking our roads and our air with cars and exhaust. We must take action, and under my administration, we will. To get there, I will continue to invest in proactive planning to increase the supply of buildable development sites and encourage new housing types in places that make sense for LA's diverse neighborhoods. And we must also support targeted rezoning along our transit corridors. Both as mayor and MTA chair, I feel I can be the bridge between that. Third, we can stimulate the market with city investments in infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, we've secured more than $3.4 billion in federal transit funding, married with our own Measure R revenues and other sources that have put us in the front of the line in the former car capital of this country. We're seen now increasingly as the public transit paradigm. It's like New York in the 1920s or London in the turn of last century. That's this moment right here in LA. We're expanding our Gold Line to the east, extending the Expo Line to the west, where soon you'll be able to go from the beach to the bars downtown in a single day in 40 minutes. Next week, I'll be breaking ground with hopefully the Transportation Secretary for his third visit in just 8 months to expand the Purple Line subway underneath Wilshire Boulevard to get from Koreatown to the edge of Beverly Hills. And we've broken ground on our new Crenshaw line, which will correct, among other things, not only bring transit through South Los Angeles, but a decades-old failure by successfully connecting rail to LAX at long last. We're also investing in our streetscapes, too. The staff of my Great Streets Initiative are hard at work today. Actually, we have the former mayor of Curitiba, the guy who penned the phrase urban acupuncture, talking to the Great Streets group downtown as I speak here, to promote safe, vibrant, walkable communities on our first 15 street segments throughout LA, and that's just the beginning of the number of street segments that we will do. Famed architect Louis Kahn once said that a street is a room by agreement. It's a gathering space, a living space, and a community space. So along with better roads, parks, and other infrastructure, these are the sort of catalysts that drive housing, that incentivize investments, and that bring people to our city. My last point, the fourth one for housing availability, is often neglected, but absolutely necessary. We must build community support for housing, both market rate and affordable, with good design and sensitivity to neighborhood character. And we've created new urban tools, design guidelines to help ensure that new development is smart, it's attractive, and faithful to neighborhood expectations. At the beginning of the year, I said I would expand our Department of City Planning's Urban Design Studio, and we've done just that, even in tough budget times. We're helping shape development in neighborhood-friendly ways, reimagining our codes to allow more creative architecture, and now we have citywide guidelines in place, as well as tailored guidelines for major regional centers like downtown and Warner Center, and I want to expand that to include other regional centers as well. So that's what we can do on the housing front, but the fact remains that even with dramatic increases in market rate and affordable housing, LA will continue to be an expensive city in which to live. I do believe that old American adage that if you work full-time, you should be able to support your families. But increasingly, that is a difficult thing for our residents to do. So we have to encourage growth with a comprehensive economic development strategy in middle-class jobs in this city again. We have to say that we're open for business, that we know how to get things done, that we're focused on key industries, and that we support initiatives like raising the minimum wage to help people have the buying power to help stimulate our economy once again. So I'm focusing on key industries like media and entertainment, aerospace, manufacturing, and technology. The good news is LA is on the move. Since I became mayor, we have added more than 50,000 new jobs to the city, one of the fastest paces this city has ever seen. We've cut our unemployment rate by more than 2 points. And we're looking to add more high-wage jobs through our successful work to win access to up to $1.3 billion from the federal government. As was mentioned in the introduction, when we won, I brought 4 counties together, San Diego, Orange, Ventura, and LA, for our aerospace industry to be able to look at ways that we can do advanced manufacturing and job training in that key middle-class industry as well. And because of the coalition which I led, which included many of you in this room, and thank you for your support, we achieved what folks thought was impossible, more than tripling our film tax credit to bring $1.6 billion that will leverage $6 billion of production and tens of thousands of jobs for this state and for our city through state action that moved a great governor from highly cynical to highly skeptical, but he signed it. And thank you, Governor Brown. I told him, I know a lot of people think the high-speed rail is crazy, but you know you're right. This is my high-speed rail. I know I'm right, even if you think I'm crazy, so he signed it. We must address the fact that today, though, 567,000, get that, 567,000 Angelenos earn the minimum wage today. If our poor, and it's an arbitrary line, but the federal standard, just take it for a moment, people living under the federal poverty line, in just the city of LA, were their own city, it would be a top 10 city. If in the county we took our poor living under the federal poverty line, they would be the 3rd largest city in America. We cannot afford the poverty rate that we have in this town. We simply have to do something to move forward in a town where every economist, left, right, and center, says what's lagging in our recovery right now is there's not buying power in an economy which is 75% about consumerism, that is lagging at the bottom end because people cannot buy, cannot go out to a restaurant, cannot help our main streets be vital. So I put forward a common sense proposal to raise the minimum wage in this city and with mayors in neighboring cities to $13.25 in 2017, and after that to peg it to the CPI so we never have to come back and have these conversations that are disruptive for business or for workers every 10 years or so. And if we pass this, this will allow more people to live their American dream here in LA. Those workers support overall with themselves 1 million people in the city who could be lifted out of poverty by work that we put together. That means they'll have money left over after paying their rent, that they can spend on our main streets, that they can take their family out to a restaurant, and to strengthen our businesses and neighborhoods. And I understand whenever you talk about raising the minimum wage, there's a lot of fear, and it's a legitimate fear. I don't dismiss it for 1 second. I just had office hours downtown, something I've been doing for 13 years, and I had a lot of business owners who came to visit me. One of them is a parking lot operator that owns a lot of parking lots downtown. They came in, they said, "I want to talk to you about the minimum wage." I thought they were going to go in one direction. And the second sentence they said is, "We completely support you. In fact, we've wanted to pay our folks a livable wage, but we can't when our competitor right next to us won't." And if you level that playing field, I guarantee you, we know what it means for productivity. Whenever we've boosted our benefits, we've gotten better productivity. Whenever we've been able to pay a higher wage, we've had less turnover. The fast food industry, for instance, has 157% turnover each year, essentially a permanent help wanted sign out in front of fast food joints, which is extremely expensive when it comes to training. Ladies and gentlemen, our housing crisis reflects in many ways the magnetic attraction of Los Angeles. But we have to make sure that magnetism has a conscience to it as well, to make sure that we do not lose sight of the housing that we need to build and the middle-class jobs that we have to attract. The elimination of a gross receipts tax, which chases businesses away from our city. A job training system that until Jan Perry kind of took over the Economic Workforce Development Department was training 4,200 people a year. And this year, my second year of my administration, will train 45,000 people with the skills they need to get into those middle-class jobs, which we know there's demand, but those companies won't land here if we don't have people graduating from our high schools and being trained for those jobs of tomorrow. Simply put, Los Angeles still, luckily, remains a place where people want to live, where they want to be. We're the western capital of the United States, the northern capital of Latin America, the eastern capital of the Pacific Rim. I mean, looking at these flags here, if we didn't have a city here, we'd have to build one, just given where the world economy is today. But luckily, not only is there a city here, there's a great city here. People would come, thinkers, makers, entrepreneurs, the most creative people on the face of the earth grow up here and come to Los Angeles because there is this magnetism. This special city that we call home is a place that also can be special, not just for the aggregate of what we do, but making sure that nobody is left behind in the work that we do. I thank you and LABC for always giving us that conscience of saying business and doing well for the worker are not mutually exclusive, that the environment actually helps us create jobs when we do good green policies like a feed-in tariff or looking at ways that we can do green building, that the connectivity that we have with each other exists in policies too. No good transportation policy can exist without good housing policy, without good environmental policy. And so today I ask you to join me in that reform of City Hall, in that move to provide a more economically just city, and in a way that we can move forward past the ways in our recent history, which LA was so good at saying no, killing projects, saying no to initiatives, and taking those brave steps that we'll look back on a decade from now and say, this helped LA enter a second golden age like the one that we had in the 70s and the 80s. It is our time. This is the place. Los Angeles must do this for ourselves, but also as an example for the world. And I look forward to helping lead that with each and every one of you. Thank you so much.